Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Hit the like and subscribe, and let's begin. We have 3 great stories for you today. The first story.
Ended here? Not a problem. A few years back, I was on an interview panel recruiting for an IT specialist in our company. The interview process was pretty standard. A series of HR-type questions, a technical test, and the presentation of a scenario. If you have worked in IT, you will be familiar with this. As we worked through the list, we saw some good candidates, and some who were really out of their depth. Then, in came that candidate. You can usually tell by their overconfident attitude and their body language as they sit down. As you would expect, this was a guy, and he came and fixed each of us with an intent look in turn, sat down, leaned back in the chair in what I've seen as the power position. And the interview started. The HR questions went okay. We went through his CV, discussed previous roles, and I probed a little deeper on some of his answers as they started to have the odd hole. We got to the end of that, and I said we were going to move on to the technical section of the process. At that point, he said, "I can save you some time on that. Here are all my certifications. I don't do contrived tests when I have better skills than anyone here." And he placed a stack of certificates on the desk. I'd never seen such arrogance in an interview and was taken aback for a moment. The person from HR stepped straight up and said, "Thanks for those details. We will take note of that. But everyone who comes for a role here is treated equally. Part of our process is a technical test, and this has been explained to you by the recruitment agency." The chap responded saying, "Yes, but I explained to the agency, these tests are pointless, and I will not be doing it. If you insist on this, then you can terminate the interview." Fine. I was more than happy to comply with his request. I said, "Thank you very much for coming in. I will get the security officer to escort you out." We stood up and left him waiting in the meeting room for security. His power pose had gone, and he looked totally shocked. The compliance with his request was probably not the malicious on our part. I just followed our company policy on equality in interviews. But I got real sense of satisfaction seeing his bluster and arrogance evaporate. He was less than complimentary about us to the recruitment agency, but we were completely open and honest about the events with them. I gather they chose to stop putting him forward for interviews very soon after that.
The second story.
Just follow the specs. Don't fill in the blanks. I'm a software developer. I was working with a business analyst who would gather what the users wanted and write a specification document for me to develop. Once implemented, he would test it out to validate if it adhered to the specs before delivering to the clients. He was very competent and mostly a cool guy, but when we were facing a short deadline, he would get stressed out and be rude sometimes. One of those times, I was developing a page and decided to add a couple of quality of life features that ended up pushing the delivery one more day. When he found out, he rushed at me in a high tone saying all sorts of stuff. Among those that I should just follow the specs to the letter and don't fill in the blanks. Got it, man. Fast forward a couple of sprints, he requested a feature that required some background processing and to send an email to the user once they have completed it. No details on the email content. When the time for him to test came, he wasn't happy to receive a blank email with no subject. Business analyst, what the F is this? Me. I followed the specs to the letter and didn't fill in the blanks, as you requested. His face of defeat was priceless.
The third story.
No problem. I can wait. So I worked at a great engineering place for a few years. I ran a small team doing hands-on work, often directly for design engineers. We got a new manager who turned out to be a total disaster and particularly hated the close and casual communication between my team and design. Felt it was going over his head. He first put rules in place requiring going through several people to relay issues back to design and similar fudge. My team was cut down to just me and one other quite new guy. We weren't hugely busy, so the main trouble being if I went on holiday, I'd come back to a lot of rework. He also did clever things like standing outside the toilets to ensure that nobody washed their hands before breaks. Some oily work for some guys, so washing could take a few minutes. Instead, everyone washed up 20 minutes early, then did nothing until break. So in quiet periods, I started grabbing a spare computer and typing up work instructions. Not surprisingly, Super Manager couldn't resist making comment on this. But when I explained the issue, he said it shouldn't just make work instructions, then promised to send along the official work instruction format. He never did, but I shrugged it off and said nothing. Few months later, and the company being bought out by an international firm and the inevitable major redundancies. My name was high on the hit list. I had a good idea, due to the history, even though everyone else was sure I was safe and effectively essential, especially with my team being just me by then. Anyway, true enough, I was made redundant, but made a fantastic exit interview. One of the principal engineers had offered to attend with me. Super manager and HR listed off some laughable reasons to make me redundant, such as my rearranging doctor's appointments to stay late, and my coming in to work night shifts on a holiday. I still don't know how they thought these made sense. After that, I just quietly listed off the various roles I was solely covering for them. Technical skill sets like fiber optics and HV, etc. But happily accepted my redundancy payout and signed off IP and such. And then supermanager, not feeling entirely comfortable with the looks the principal engineer was giving him, asked me for the work instructions, and I had to answer, "Oh, you told me to stop writing them until you gave me the format you wanted." They rang me and offered for me to come back, but I politely declined. I heard later they had to hire 3 people to cover my work.
I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new videos come out.